This is NASA TV.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm NASA's Gary Jordan. Thank you for joining us remotely for the first in our series of briefings to preview the upcoming Crew-3 mission, the third crew rotation mission, and the fourth crewed mission on a U.S. commercial spacecraft to the International Space Station. This briefing will kick off today's agenda with updates from leadership representing NASA, SpaceX, and ESA, the European Space Agency. Joining our panel today is Kathy Leaders, Associate Administrator for NASA's Space Operations Mission Directorate. She's in Hawthorne, California at SpaceX headquarters right now with Sarah Walker, Director of Dragon Mission Management for SpaceX. Coming in from NASA's Johnson Space Center is Steve Stitch, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Also from Johnson, Joel Montalbano, Manager for the International Space Station Program at NASA. And finally, we welcome Frank Tavina, Manager for the International Space Station Program at ESA. We'll first start with some opening comments from each of our briefers before taking questions. Questions will come in on our phone bridge as well as on social media platforms. If you're on the phone, please press *1 to add your name to our queue and ask a question. And if you're on social media, use the hashtag AskNASA. We'll now begin with initial remarks from Kathy Leaders.
Wow, what an exciting time for us. I just can't believe here we are 16 months after Bob and Doug have flown. And here we are once again getting ready for another set of missions. It's such an exciting time in our International Space Station ecosystem because we're getting ready to further use the space station for another 10 years. And so what that means for these particular missions is that the 4 crew going up are going to be doing even more science, buying down our exploration risks and pushing the bounds of technology and continuing to establish our key international partner relationships. It's so great to see Aki and Thomas on orbit today and see the Crew-3 vehicle will bringing up Matthias. And so there'll be a true international collection of astronauts on orbit, and it'll be really, really fun to see that during our direct handover time. I wanted to emphasize that, Kayla will be flying, and she will be our 68th female crew astronaut flying, and once again showing what we can do to further the advancement of females in space, which is one of my favorite topics. I wanted to kind of emphasize that when I came into this job, I said one of the things I really love about it is that we have tons of missions, and if you look over this next year at what we're going to be accomplishing with our multiple partners this is the next year of missions. And so we've got science missions coming up. I have to have a list because of how many we have: Lucy, DART, IXPE, and James Webb at the end of the year. And it's a very, very exciting time from a human spaceflight perspective, with obviously continued flight of our SpaceX Crew-Dragon system, bringing on the Boeing Crew system, and our Artemis uncrewed demonstration mission for exploration human spaceflight capabilities. Keep following us because this is a really, really, really exciting time for us in NASA and with our partnerships, both international and with our industry team partners, and across the portfolio as we're moving out into this very, very exciting year. Thank you. And I think Steve Stitch, you are next.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy, and it's great to be here today as well to talk to you about our next crew rotation. As Kathy said, it seems like Demo 2 was just yesterday in some ways, and then in some ways it seems like it was a long time ago. But here we are in our second crew rotation mission, where we'll bring Crew 2 down, and then we'll launch Crew 3 here over the next month. Of course, Crew 2's been on orbit. Endeavor's been on orbit for a while. This Friday, it'll break the record for the Crew 1 resilience vehicle. It'll have been on orbit for 168 days, so we continue to press the boundaries with our vehicles. Crew-3, the launch date is October 30th. The launch time is 2:43 a.m. on Saturday. That's October 30th. We should dock within about 24 hours. The docking time would be about 12:36 a.m. Eastern time. Both these times are Eastern on Sunday, October 31st. You'll get the chance to talk to Raja and the crew later today. You know, it's exciting to fly this crew for me. Raja Chari worked with us in Commercial Crew, leading the joint test team back when we were flying Bob and Doug. And so for me, it's just a big pleasure to see Raja to go fly the mission. You know, this mission is exciting for us. I would say for the Crew-3 vehicle coming up, we'll hear a little bit more from Sarah Walker, but you know, there's not a lot of new items on this vehicle. We are going to fly a reused nose cone on Dragon for the first time, and then we have a little bit of a software upgrade for some contingencies during entry that we've added to the vehicle, and we continue to make it safer. I would like to congratulate SpaceX on the recent Inspiration 4 mission. You know, one of the purposes of Commercial Crew is not only to have these very important missions to the space station, but to also further an industry in low Earth orbit. And the I-4 mission was hugely successful. A great partnership between SpaceX and NASA on data sharing from all the flights. I would say a few things about that flight. You know, we have the pleasure of collecting data after the flight at that high altitude that they flew, about 575 kilometers, which is about where Hubble Space Telescope is. And so we'll look at the TPS coming back, the thermal protection system, and be able to understand an MMOD environment a little bit better. You know, we are looking at the parachutes from every flight that we fly, whether it be a Crew Dragon, a Cargo Dragon, or the Inspiration 4 vehicle. NASA flew the WB-57 aircraft to collect some data on parachutes. In exchange for that, SpaceX is letting NASA look at the parachutes that we recovered from that flight, so it's a great partnership there as well. And then if you just think about that mission, it was 3 days in Dragon end to end, and so it was a really good test of the life support system on Dragon. For the crew being there, we learned a lot about the carbon dioxide scrubbing and how that atmosphere revitalization works. And so NASA's a partner to getting all that data back. And we continue to learn from every flight, whether it be a cargo flight or a crewed flight. You know, over time, crew assignments change. I've been in this business a little over 30 years, and I've seen that happen. You know, recently we announced the crew change on for Crew-5 for SpaceX. We're going to fly Nicole Mann as the commander of that flight and Josh Quesada as the pilot. They were formerly on the Boeing missions. It was just the right time in their career to make this change. They've been assigned to the Boeing flights since about 2018, and so they've been assigned to Crew-5. And it's exciting for us that we have Crew-3 in final training for flight, Crew-4, Crew-5, and then also the CFT crew and the Starliner 1 crew as well. In terms of Boeing, the root cause work going on the vehicle is progressing very well. We're working through the fault tree methodically and understanding that data. We expect to put out a release later this week from Boeing and the NASA team on how that is progressing, and we're excited to fly Boeing again as soon as they're ready. Once again, it's an exciting time to be part of Commercial Crew. We have a great team between the partnership between NASA, Boeing, and SpaceX, and I'm just proud to represent them here today. Thank you. And now we'll turn it over to Joel.
Thank you, Steve. You know, it's welcome again to the Crew-3 pre-launch press brief. As you've heard from Kathy and Steve, it's been a busy time on orbit. Just to recap some vehicle traffic in the last couple of weeks. We've had a Soyuz relocation to the multi-purpose laboratory module, the first time we've docked a vehicle to that module. And that's actually the 20th time we've relocated the Soyuz on board the International Space Station in our history. So we're excited and congratulate our Russian colleagues. We've also had recently the return of the SpaceX 23 cargo vehicle off the coast of Florida. And we returned about 4,000 pounds, over 4,000 pounds of cargo science and research. And we're able to get that to Kennedy Space Center and in the hands of our payload developers and within the advertised time that NASA has provided to them pre-mission. So again, another successful mission. And just recently, yesterday, the launch and docking of a Soyuz vehicle, the Russian vehicle that has the movie mission that you've heard about in the press. And that'll enable two of our crew members, Mark Van de Heij and Piotr, to stay for a full year on board the International Space Station. Specifically for Crew-3, we're excited to have another long-duration increment. This mission will carry about 400 pounds of cargo to the International Space Station. They'll stay about 180 days. In addition to the 3 NASA astronauts, we're excited to have another European Space Agency astronaut launch on the U.S. vehicle and stay on orbit for the duration of the increment. I want to thank the Commercial Crew Program. I want to thank SpaceX. I want to thank all our domestic partners, our international partners, as we work to optimize onboard the International Space Station, the science and research, the low Earth orbit commercialization, and the exploration development. And we do this for people across the globe. So thank you again. And with that, let me hand over to Sarah.
Thanks so much, Joel. It's an honor to be here with my NASA and ESA colleagues, and it's hard to believe that we're just a few weeks away from yet another NASA Commercial Crew mission to the National Space Station. So as was already mentioned, in about 3 weeks, we'll be launching the Crew-3 mission. It's our 5th human spaceflight mission overall, and our 4th to the International Space Station for NASA. As always, I want to thank NASA and ESA for their trust in us to fly their astronauts. It's been an honor to work with Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias this flight. And in fact, the astronauts will be with us in Florida this weekend for the crew equipment interface test. This is an important pre-flight activity. It's kind of like a test drive where the astronauts put on their actual flight suits and they climb in their actual flight vehicle that will take them to space in a few weeks. And it's one last walkthrough of all the connections and interfaces, familiarization with their flight vehicle. So we perform suit leak checks, we actuate the seat between the different positions, and just generally get the crew oriented again before their flight. So Crew-3 will be flying on a new Dragon spacecraft. It's really exciting to introduce another Crew Dragon to our fleet to support our human spaceflight manifest. We've got another one in the production line now that should be ready in the spring to support more human spaceflight missions. And the Falcon 9 first stage booster actually supported another ISS mission, CRS-22, just 4 months ago, and will be a second flight here on Crew-3. So as mentioned, we're targeting no earlier than October 30th for the launch, and we're just stepping into, over the next few weeks, the last of our hardware closeouts and pre-flight testing and analysis, and we conduct a series of joint pre-flight readiness reviews for Crew-3 and then pre-undock readiness reviews for Crew-2 with our NASA colleagues. As you know, we do extensive hardware and data reviews every flight from mission to mission, and this is the beauty of flying frequently and getting all of our hardware back to look at. We have a ton of data to continuously be in a spirit of improving and making our vehicles more and more robust. We are working one observation related to the waste system on these 2 vehicles. So we recently partnered with NASA to do some inspections on the Crew-2 vehicle, make sure that all that hardware is ready to bring the vehicle and the crew back in early November following the launch of Crew-3. And then we did develop a small design improvement that we implemented on the Crew-3 vehicle and will fly on subsequent flights to make the system even more robust for flying these vehicles multiple times. There's been a lot of Dragon activity recently. Joel and Steve mentioned some of it. Last week, we brought home our most recent cargo resupply mission, CRS-23, splashed down the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Florida. And a week or 2 before that was the historic Inspiration-4 mission, which was a huge success for SpaceX and the crew, for St. Jude. And it couldn't be a more exciting time to be here and be a part of this industry. And I think it was also a huge success for the NASA Commercial Crew program. You know, NASA Commercial Crew has opened the doors to missions like this being possible, and we're just very excited to be here and partnered with NASA and everything that we've done together. Also, when we launched that mission Inspiration-4, we actually had 3 Dragons in space simultaneously, so another first for SpaceX. So Inspiration-4 was orbiting the Earth for several days, flying free around the Earth, and we had a cargo Dragon and a Crew Dragon docked to the ISS at the same time. So lots of busyness going on bringing home the Inspiration 4 and the Cirrus 23 mission in the last few weeks marked our 4th and 5th recovery, splashdown and recovery operations of 2021. The 6th will obviously be shortly after Crew-3 launch, when there will be a short handover between the Crew-2 and the Crew-3 crew up on board the space station, and then we'll bring the Crew-2 home back to Earth a few days later in early November. So again, thank you so much to NASA and ESA for your trust in us. We're looking forward to a great mission.
All right, thank you, Sarah. And with that, we'll go to Frank DeVinna.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Also from the ESA side, of course, we are very excited about this new mission, the second mission of an ESA astronaut on a Crew Dragon. We have currently Thomas on orbit that recently, only 2 days ago, became the commander of the International Space Station, and he will be receiving Matthias as a commander. So it's a first also for ESA in this respect. And then afterwards, we will have Samantha flying in spring next year. So it's the first time for ESA to have 3 back-to-back missions and actually be 1.5 years continuously on orbit of the International Space Station. And together with the 5-person crew, with Mark staying on orbit for 1 year, as Joel mentioned, we have an unprecedented amount of crew time available for the partnership, but also for ESA in this respect. So we are executing a lot of science for our partner agencies, CNES on one hand with Thomas, and DLR on the other hand with Matthias. Of course, this is they will continue to do each other's experiments as well. It's not just national experiments. We also continue to do all the ESA science, national payloads. And as Joel mentioned, also we start doing more and more commercial science and commercial operations on board of the ISS, which again shows a big success of the partnerships and will move us forward to the LEO economy that we all together, I think, want to build in the future. So exciting times. We also had recently the launch of the MLM, the Nauka module on the Russian side, that brought the European robotic arm to the ISS. We have been long waiting for that, and now we are very happy that the arm is there, that we will go through the commissioning, and that during the second part of the mission of Matthias, as from January to April, we will do the first missions of the European robotic arm on board of the ISS, and that also Matthias will be heavily involved during this checkout and during these missions, and will also perform a Russian EVA to support these missions. And Russian EVA that on ESA side we have not done since a long time, since Thomas Reiter actually in the beginning of the 1990s. So we continue to work with all partners of the International Space Station. This is what is exciting for ESA, that we can continue to work with everybody. And we would like to thank then the entire partnership for supporting also the ESA objectives and these great missions. Because the results, of course, will lead to more investment of ESA on exploration in general. We have made a big step during our ministerial conference in 2019, where ESA also joined the Gateway program, and we are now in full preparation for the next ministerial conference in 2022, where other big decisions will need to be taken. And these missions, of course, the success of these missions help to convince our member states that this is good investment, that this is investment in science, in technology, and that bring benefits back to Earth. So thanks again to all the partnership and to all the people around the table, and of course also to our commercial entities, in particular here to SpaceX for bringing Matthias to orbit.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you to all of our briefers for those initial remarks. We'll now open it up for questions. Again, if you're on our phone bridge, please press *1 to submit a question. Once your name is called, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you'd like to direct your question. We'll expect a lot of questions, so if you find that yours has already been answered, press *2 to withdraw it. On social media, please use the hashtag AskNASA. So let's go ahead and start on our phone bridge with Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now.
Thank you. Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. First of all, for Steve Stitch, I'm curious if you could go into a little more detail about what you learned from Inspiration 4. You talked about the MMOD environment, life support system performance. Any initial results from that? And beyond the toilet issue, were there any other glitches or issues that need to be analyzed coming out of Inspiration 4 before clearing Crew-3 for launch? And for Sarah, if I could talk to you about the Crew Dragon manifest. Do you have any additional Crew Dragons beyond the 2 new vehicles for Crew-3 and the one next year in production, or do you think 4 vehicles is sufficient for your manifest? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll start with the first set of questions. In terms of the learning from Inspiration 4, what we have done so far is worked hand in hand with SpaceX to go look at the thermal protection system, and then if there's any micromode MMOD object impacts anywhere, what we do is we go take a sample of that, and what we're really trying to do is we have an environmental model of the MMOD, and so we're just trying to corroborate what we're seeing on the vehicle with that model. And so we don't have any results yet. You know, what I would say what they found so far has been very typical of that environment. The environment is a little higher in terms of debris. There's more debris at that altitude, and so what they've seen so far, you know, none of it was detrimental to the mission, but it's just collecting that data and learning, are our models sufficient for that environment? In terms of life support, you know, the things I think we learned was the ability of the CO2 scrubbing system, the carbon dioxide scrubbing system, to do a really good job. We were swapping out lithium hydroxide canisters a little early on our crew flights. I think we learned that we have a little more capability and robustness in the system than we expected. And then, you know, from parachutes, you know, a minor sleeving on the drogues kind of rose up during when we looked at that imagery. We went and looked at the Crew-3 vehicle and already made a fix to that to enhance some stitching on this little sleeve. It's kind of an abrasion protection for the riser line, which is the big line that comes up from the spacecraft up to the parachute. And we learned that, and we have already fixed that on the Crew-3 vehicle. So as Sarah said, it's great to have these vehicles flying very quickly, and then we can take the data from those flights in a very timely fashion and then feed that forward into the next crewed mission. So, you know, for me, every flight is a gift and a trove of data, and we just need to go through it together with SpaceX, and we've done that already on Inspiration 4. And I'll hand it over to Sarah for the next question.
Yes, and as you said, we do have this vehicle coming online for Crew-3, another Crew Dragon vehicle coming online in the spring, currently allocated to Crew-4. Those 4 Crew Dragon vehicles seem sufficient to meet our manifest, which is thriving right now, and it's exciting to see all of the traffic on these vehicles. You know, reusability is key to SpaceX and both our rockets and our spacecraft, and it's been neat to see the processes build up and the multiple lanes of processing there at the Cape, where we're turning around these vehicles and flying them again. We also have another cargo Dragon coming into the fleet, expected to be finished early next year as well, to support a cargo mission later next year.
All right, the next question we have is from Eric Berger with Ars Technica.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for doing this. My question is for Kathy or for Stitch. Can we get an update on the status of negotiations with the Russians? I know that there was a seat left open on the Crew-5 mission, the announcements you made today that potentially could go to them if there's an agreement reached in time. There have been rumors of cosmonauts at SpaceX's headquarters in California. So I'm just wondering if maybe you could give us an update on kind of where you are. And, you know, are the Russians ever going to agree to fly on Crew Dragon, and kind of what's it going to take to convince them that that vehicle is safe enough for their people? Thank you.
Joel jump in. We have been working with our Russian partners and working with them on what we call a crew swap strategy. The importance of the crew swap strategy, like we've talked about before, is to make sure that each of us have crew members on every single crew vehicle that goes up to the International Space Station. And so obviously we've demonstrated that the Crew Dragon's a capable vehicle going forward, and now it's really just a matter of us kind of putting the next layer of government-to-government agreements together to support that. But Joel, if you want to add anything, jump in.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Kathy. So last week I was in Moscow talking to our Roscosmos colleagues and trying to move that agreement forward. We've made some small updates as we kind of look at that agreement and get it ready for Roscosmos to submit it to their ministry. And so our target is still for Crew-5 in fall of 22 to have a cosmonaut on that vehicle. And then the agreement would be a swap vehicle, so a no-cost swap where we'd have an American on the Soyuz in the same time frame. So that's our goal, and that continues to be our goal.
All right, the next question comes from Joey Roulette from the New York Times.
Happen after SpaceX's last post-certification mission under CCTCAP? Are NASA and SpaceX discussing an extension to that contract, or a new phase of the program right now? Thanks.
And Joey, your question was partially cut off. Can you repeat it?
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Questions for Kathy or Steve. What will happen after SpaceX's last PCM mission under the CCTCAP? And I was wondering if NASA or SpaceX are discussing an extension to the CCTCAP or a new phase of the program. Thanks.
Yeah, I can take that one.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so we're in the early stages of looking at what we do for those follow-on missions after the PCM6 timeframe in terms of the contract, and we're off working that today. I can't talk too much about it, but we are looking ahead to what do we do after PCM6 for SpaceX, and someday down the road we'll be doing the same thing for Boeing, I'm sure. So.
All right, the next question comes from Jeff Faust with Space News.
I wanted to follow up on Eric's question about the Soyuz crew swap agreement. If you're not going to have an agreement in place until Crew-5, just a question either for Kathy or Steve, what are the plans for filling out the roster for Crew-4 and then also acquiring a Soyuz seat in the spring of next year?
Yeah, I can take the Crew-4 part. We do have a backup crew member for Crew-4, and we'll work with Joel, and at the right time we'll name that crew member for Crew-4, and then I'll let Kathy address the rest of the question.
I can probably take the Soyuz. This is Joel. The Soyuz will have 3 cosmonauts, so we will not have a NASA astronaut on that Soyuz mission. We will schedule the handover between Crew-3 and Crew-4 such that we maintain the U.S. presence on board. So it's something that we're looking at and scheduling our launch dates appropriately.
All right, the next question comes from Kristen Fisher for CNN.
Hello, everyone. Kristen Fisher with CNN. Thank you so much for doing this. I want to ask a question about the crew reassignment and how the public should view the timing of this crew reassignment. Steve, I know you said that it was the right time in their career, but is there also a lack of confidence in Boeing to fix the problem with Starliner in a timely fashion so that these astronauts can indeed finally get this spaceflight experience?
Yeah, I'll take that. It just, to us, it seemed like the right time. We've been working with the astronaut office hand in hand, and as I said, Nicole and Josh have been with Starliner for a long time, and then when you look down the road, we really expect our astronauts to fly on these commercial missions, and then someday each one of those will perhaps get assigned to an Artemis mission down the road. So we really wanted to get Nicole and Josh some experience and get them into space as soon as we can. We have not lost confidence in the Boeing team. The team is doing an incredible job of working through the root cause on the valve issue where we ended up delaying the flight, the OFT-2 flight. We work hand in hand with Boeing. I have every bit of confidence that they're going to figure out what the problem is, and they'll rectify it, and we'll get back to flight really soon. So it really wasn't related to that. It was just really time for them to get assigned to a different flight and get experience so that someday, they can fly other flights potentially beyond low Earth orbit.
Next question is coming from Bill Harwood for CBS News.
Yeah, hi, Bill Harwood, CBS. For Steve or Kathy, where does Axiom 1 fit into the early 22 schedule right now? Are there any issues as you guys, work with Axiom to plan that flight? And for Sarah, what was the problem with the waste removal system? And did you find a similar issue on the Crew-3 vehicle? I mean, I assume you had the crew checked. Can you give us an update on that, please? Thanks.
I'll let Kathy talk about Axiom 1.
Well, Joel, why don't you talk about the manifest this next year? I think that will be important for us because I think this is another indication of us kind of working through a busy station manifest at the same time that we're bringing new vehicles online. So, Joel, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay. So I think everybody's up to speed on the, what's going on with the Soyuz mission. After the Soyuz mission, we'll have a Progress mission, then the Crew-3 mission. We'll have the Russians will have another Soyuz space participant mission in December. At the end of December, the last couple weeks in December, we'll have the launch of the SpaceX 24 mission, which will stay up about 30 days. Then in February, we're planning the Axiom mission on February 21st. And that'll be about an 8-day mission, and the plan will be that mission will come up and down before the next Soyuz mission in that time frame.
And there was an additional question for Sarah.
Sure, and to answer your question on the waste system, so there was a small connection in the system that we observed to be a bit loose. We've seen it on a vehicle or two now, and so we just rolled in thank you. We just rolled in an improvement to make that joint a little tighter. But no, the Crew-2 vehicle, we've been working through our due diligence with NASA to look at all those systems, make sure that they're healthy and the vehicle's ready to return. That's part of our standard undocking readiness review process. And so we've been doing that over the last couple of weeks as we prepare for these reviews, and the vehicle's looking ready to come home.
Next question comes from Mark Carreau for Aviation Week.
Thanks. I have maybe two questions here. For Steve Stitch, can you give us the current forecast on the Boeing test flights that are the two that are needed to achieve certification? Is that going to happen in the first months of 2022? And I'd like to ask Joel, too, if you can explain what IROSA work might be done by the next crew to the station.
Yeah, I can address the Boeing flights. We continue to work hand in hand with Boeing. If you just kind of look at the rest of this year, as Joel laid out the manifest with station and then where we're at with ULA, here we are in October. Kathy mentioned there's a very important Lucy mission on October 16th with ULA. So there's really not an opportunity for OFT2 to fly this year. And then from a station perspective, it would be sometime early next year where a window would open up for OFT2 in the first part of 22. And then after that, we'll have to kind of look at the remediations and then where does the CFT flight fall next year.
On the IROSA work, as you know, we did the install of the support structure from one of the next two solar arrays that are coming up. And NG-17, the Earth orbit mission, the Cygnus spacecraft, will bring the support structure for the second array. And then in the fall of 22, SpaceX 26 will bring up the two arrays, and we'll plan to have the install during that time frame. So this crew, the Crew-3, will get to do a support structure install, but unfortunately they won't get to put the new solar arrays. That'll be a future crew.
Next we have Michael Sheets for CNBC.
Hey, this is a follow-up question for Steve on the OFT2 reflight. You said there's not really an opportunity to fly before the end of this year. What is the window, if you could give me, in terms of maybe a couple weeks or something like that, in early 2022 when OFT2 will fly, and when are we going to find out when the first CFT mission is going to get scheduled? Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's really too early to narrow in on a date right now. We really need to get to root cause on the valve issue on the service module for the OFT2 vehicle. Boeing and NASA are working together on that root cause. We have various materials tests underway at different parts of the country. We have some valves in test at White Sands to try to understand the root cause. We've done a lot of troubleshooting on the vehicle and understand that heat may be a phenomenon that helps the valves to open and close. Really, the next step is to get the valves into some disassembly and look at those valves. And then once we do that, we'll have a little bit more certainty on the path forward of when OFT2 is, and then from that where CFT is. And so we're kind of methodically working through the fault tree and looking for root cause, trying to understand that. And it's very important for both Boeing and NASA to understand root cause. And then from there, we'll move into when we can find the right window, working with Joel and working with ULA to find the right window for OFT2, and then later in the year, CFT.
Next, we have Chelsea Goad for Space.com.
Hi, Chelsea Goad here. I have a question about the payload. As far as payload goes for Crew-3, are there any notable experiments or items on board? And I do have to ask if there is anything on board for the upcoming Halloween holiday.
So this is Joel. We try and take care of the crew members for all the holidays. So every vehicle that comes up around a holiday, we try and have some surprises or in some cases some pre-planned gifts for the crew members, and we'll do the same for upcoming Halloween. I didn't understand or couldn't hear the first part of your question about payloads.
Oh, definitely. It must have just gotten cut off. Thank you so much. I was just wondering if, as far as the payload goes, if there are any notable experiments or anything else on board that you can share yet.
So, every time we fly an increment mission, we have about 300 different investigations that we do on board. And so this expedition will be no different. And across that expedition, we'll have experiments that cross over from science and utilization that we do, as well as technology development, and then low Earth orbit commercialization, as we talked. And this will be no different. We're just starting the process of our what we call our readiness reviews. So we'll have a station readiness review, a commercial crew readiness review, and then a flight readiness review, where we're going over all the status of the payloads that are scheduled to fly. And so at the upcoming reviews that we'll have, and then the press brief right before launch, we'll give you a status of all the payloads that are scheduled to fly for this expedition. But it'll be all the standard categories that we've been working on before. There'll be some human research. There'll be some areas where we'll do some rodent research, standard stuff that we've been doing for the last number of years on board the International Space Station.
Next, we have Irene Klotz from Aviation Week.
Thank you. My question's for Kathy. Regarding the subsea initiative that NASA rolled out a while back, what sort of reviews and insights is NASA having into these new operational suborbital passenger systems that are rolling out? And if you could just give us an update on NASA's interest and involvement and possible use of the system. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll get started, and then this is another question where I'll have Steve add some, because we're actually doing this activity under the commercial crew program to give our commercial crew program folks the chance to maybe work with a different group of folks that are flying crews in a little bit different environment. We actually are developing our concepts for how we're going to be working with the companies that are developing their emerging capabilities, and then also working with the FAA to make sure that we're synergizing the data that the government gets across both the FAA and NASA to make sure that we kind of minimize the overhead to the companies. We're going to be looking at kind of taking a new approach and maybe looking at a way to be able to assess the vehicles based more on their flight experience and adapting a new kind of a safety assessment process for those particular vehicles, since we understand that they're in a very different place from a design and development standpoint. Steve, you want to talk about what your team's been doing?
Yeah, Kathy, I'm happy to do that. As Kathy said, we have a little different approach for subsea. for the flights that we're flying with Boeing and SpaceX, you know, we laid out the requirement set. We needed 4 crew. We needed a certain amount of cargo. We wanted the powered freezers to go up and down. And a 210-day mission lifetime. We laid all that out. These are a little different, where we're going to try to take advantage of existing vehicles. You know, including we're looking at the Blue Origin vehicle and the Virgin Galactic vehicles, and our team has been entering into relationships and getting data on those vehicles and looking at the systems and looking at how they're flying. And, you know, it'll take about a year or so to get through that and look at the data, and then we'll start to decide what's the next phase really for subsea and what's the future plan to go perhaps someday use those flights for NASA purposes. So it's in the infancy. It is under commercial crew, and we are spending time sort of laying out this different strategy of looking at the number of flights that they fly, how those flights perform, and then a little different model for making them available for our NASA personnel someday.
Next question comes from Joey Roulette with the New York Times.
Hey, thanks for taking my question again. I just was wondering if all of Boeing's PCM missions will fly on Atlas V rockets, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah. To date, you know, Boeing has purchased enough of the Atlas V vehicles to fly out their manifest, and so that's the current plan with Boeing is for the PCMs that they have on contract, including also OFT-2 and CFT to fly on the Atlas. And we work, you know, hand in hand with Boeing and ULA as they start to cut in the Vulcan vehicle, and we look at the mods to the launch pad and so forth, just to make sure that there's, you know, the plan is to fly this mixed fleet for a while. So that's the current plan.
Next question is from Marcia Dunn with Associated Press.
Oh, yes. Hi. This is either for Kathy or Joel, or both. I was hoping for a status update on the cracks and the holes on the Russian side of the space station. Recently, Russian space officials and even the first commander of the space station have called it a serious problem that really needs to get to the bottom of. So what's the status, and what's being done about this to try to figure out what's happening and how to stop it? Thanks.
Okay, so we've been working with our Russian colleagues. The status, most of the time, the hatch to that area is closed. As you know, we previously reported that we found a couple areas of interest that we've gone ahead and taken care of. In that area, there's still a small leak in the order of maybe a pound a day, a little over a pound a day when that hatch is open that we see. And it's something that we're working with our Russian colleagues to continue to look for the additional leak source. The leak is only in that module, so there were some reports in the press that there were other leaks on board or other cracks. We're not tracking anything else. We are still tracking a small leak in the back end of that service module. As far as future things, the next thing we're working is to better understand and characterize really what's happening to that part of the module and what's causing that. So our next step is to install some strain gauges. We flew some strain gauges early this summer. We're working with our Russian colleagues on where to install those to try and get some more data. But at this time, that port is capable of accepting vehicles. In fact, we have a progress scheduled to dock to that port later this month. And so from an operational standpoint, it's not affecting us, but the fact that we do have the additional leak source is something that the teams are continuing to study and work with our Russian colleagues.
Next question is from Marcia Smith with Space Policy Online.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my call. You had announced that Jeanette Epps was also going to be a member of the Starliner 1 mission. Could you tell me what her status is? Is she still assigned to that mission?
I'll take that question. Yeah, currently she's still assigned to that mission, and we're kind of reevaluating that flight assignment. Since Starliner 1's a little further out than CFT, we're in the process of looking at that assignment and seeing if that would change over time. So that's still in work. You know, we try to announce the assignments publicly as soon as they're made, and some of them are still under evaluation, but currently she's still assigned to Starliner 1.
We have a couple of questions on social media. If you're on our phone bridge, just remember to press *1 to get into our queue to ask a question. We'll take a couple of social questions in the meantime. The first one comes from Matt on Twitter, who's asking, has the crew picked a name for the Dragon capsule? If so, what did they name it? We'll go to Steve Stitch for that.
Yeah, you know, each crew does name their capsule, and of course, Bob and Doug took the name Endeavour, and Mike Hopkins and his crew had the name Resilience for that spacecraft, and we'll just have to wait and see what Raj and the crew have come up with. I don't necessarily know at this point, but it'll be exciting when they release the name.
And we have another one from Mark on Twitter, who's asking if any spacewalks are planned for Expedition 66. Joel, we'll go to you.
Yes, we have. You know, I talked earlier about the spacewalk for installing the support structure from one of the new solar arrays. We're also, as you probably have heard about, we had a failure in our comm system. And so we have redundant comm systems on board. You've heard about our S-band system, but we had a failure just recently in the last couple weeks in the return link on one of those systems. We have 2 S-band systems. We also have another communication called the KU-band system. So from a redundancy standpoint, we're fully redundant even with this failure, but it's a piece of hardware on board that we have a spare on board, and we'll go ahead and plan to do a spacewalk before the end of the year to go ahead and replace that.
Okay, and the last one also comes from Twitter, and it's directed for Sarah, asking, it says, has SpaceX done some Dragon missions with reused heat shields? How does that work, and what's the plan for crewed capsules with respect to heat shield reuse?
Yes, thank you for your question. Yeah, we do look at all of our components and what can be reused, what we might make new. So the heat shield, we really think of it as 2 components. There's the back shell or the laminate, and then there's the thermal protection tiles, the Pica tiles that go on top. So yes, we've looked at reuse for both of those items. I believe our most recent mission, I get in trouble thinking in public. I think that our most recent mission had a reused heat shield laminate. But yeah, both of those hardware items are in the process of going through evaluation for reuse.
All right, and that'll wrap up the questions that we have in our queue. So thanks to all who submitted questions, and thanks again to our briefers for taking the time to discuss the upcoming mission. This is a first in our series of briefings this week. Tomorrow we'll offer a chance to speak with the Crew-3 astronauts, Raja Chari, Tom Marshburn, Kayla Barron, and Matthias Maurer. That's at 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, October 7th, followed by round-robin interviews with the crew. For details on this briefing and for the latest on this mission, please visit nasa.gov/commercial crew. Thanks again for joining us. That'll wrap up today's briefing.